the civilizational strength. It comes from the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Ayam Niji Paroveti Ganana Laguchetasam Udara Cheritanam Tu Vasudaiva Kutumbakam. These are the ideas of India.
Those who came and plundered our wealth, luckily, could never take away our spiritual strengths.
There are people who have figured out how to hack that. There are people who have figured out how to make use of your good will and good spirit to destroy you.
Akhyati, Anyatha Khyati, Atma Khyati. That is how we present to this world. It has to be managed. It has to be aligned with the others also.
What kind of branding do you think we should have for India? I would have said, brilliant Bharat.
Since we are in Bangalore, I'll say Ellarigu Namaskara and a 360-degree Namaskara. We have a very distinguished panel here, as you are all aware. Suresh Prabhu ji and Mukunda ji and Yoram Hazony ji. Wonderful to have you all on this panel. It's a very important discussion on conquering culture wars. I think this whole business of dealing with the culture wars of today are very important in democracies, because I do believe that this is my personal view, that there are a minority of people in democracies which are trying to set the agenda and also to take on the majority or the majority point of view for whatever reason. And the consequence of that can be disastrous for our politics, social life and so on. And that we have seen many a time. And in terms of electoral politics, since they constitute the elite and are in very key elite institutions, as we have seen in America recently, they create the impression that they are in control of the situation, but electoral results show otherwise. That has been the case in India as well over the last 10 years. So I think it's very important for us to discuss that. And culture is ideas, beliefs, customs of a particular society, and the social behavior and institutions, and of course language and so on, which is passed on from generation to generation. And even though culture and civilization are two distinct entities, they are in many ways interchangeable. And therefore, I will say that from a civilizational point of view, India has had a very unique place. This is a very significant moment for India for various reasons. One of them, I will tell you, is a sheer survival of the Constitution. Studies have shown that most constitutions die between the age of 15 to 19. The mean lifespan of a constitution in the world is 17 years. Infant mortality is pretty high. 7% of the constitutions do not survive their second birthday. Hence, our constitution deserves a big round of applause for its survival. The second very important thing, sir, as to why it has survived and grown and ensured the unity and integrity of India. Because as Dr. Ambedkar said in the Constituent Assembly, it is the flexibility that is injected into the Constitution. In fact, there are Western scholars, political scientists and others, who sometimes take a dig at us because we have amended our Constitution 106 times. They say, what is this? But I say, given our plurality, multiplicity in very many ways, and so on, this is the Indian reality and this is our solution to our problems. And in fact, Jefferson had said, every nation, every generation constitutes a nation. So therefore, amendability of a constitution is very critical for the very longevity of that instrument. And therefore, I think we have adopted that. Even Mahatma Gandhi said, emendations, he likes man-made texts because they are open to emendations. And so what we have done is, we have adopted both Mahatma Gandhi and Jefferson, and therefore we have this flexibility both in terms of our federation. Ambedkar called it a flexible federation and so on. I won't go into that now. But the point is that all this has been possible. The central point is, we have this constitution with a basket of rights for minorities and others, which is unique in the world. And having studied 80 constitutions across the world, I will assert that there is no other constitution that is etched in print with this whole basket of rights that we have in the Indian constitution for all citizens and particularly for minorities. And that is so because we are civilizationally democratic. That is the strength of this nation, and it goes back to the Rig Veda and many other texts. So, we are civilizationally democratic, we are civilizationally secular. Whatever meaning you attach to that word secular, I will say yes, we will encompass all of that. And that is why we have this whole range of rights given to our citizens in our constitution, and that has been possible because of that civilizational background and strength. And as I said, that also percolates into our culture, a very democratic culture that is there in the country. But as I said, there is a minority of people, some of whom carry a book which is allegedly the Constitution of India and which has a red cover, signifying probably where the influence is coming from. And this negationism and wokeism is disturbing the whole constitutional arrangement in very many ways. But as I said, the civilizational strength, it comes from the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, but the wise perceive it differently. Then you have another from the Maha Upanishad, Ayam Niji Paroveti Ganana Laguchetasam Udara Charitanam Tu Vasudaiva Kutumbakam. This is mine, that is yours. To think so is that of a small mind. Udara Charitanam, a large-hearted person will see the entire world as a family. So this is where, this is our past. And these are the ideas of India, which is inclusive, which is comfortable with plurality. That central idea you see in our constitution and in our way of life. And that is how we have moved on over the years, and you find it incorporated in our constitution and in our culture. But as I said, there is this minority of people, and many of them actually it goes back to the Nehruvian phase in our national life, especially post-independence and so on, where they never told us. We had republics in this nation 3,000 years ago. The Lichavi Republic, Ambastas, Yodhayas, they were republic. They elected the Rajan. They elected the head of state. Now, there are many institutions across the world from non-republics. They are institutions existing in countries which are monarchies in a sense, and who are lecturing us. So that is why we have to take note of this. So therefore, the critical part of what I am saying is that our comfort with diversity and our comfort with a liberal way of life, and this is what has passed on to us in terms of our culture and so on. And we have a very distinguished panel here who I would want them to talk about this journey of ours and the current problems we are facing and we have faced in this journey of 75 years post-independence, dealing with many of these issues and that negationism, trying to make us feel that there was nothing in the past. In fact, in school, they never told me there were republics in India. There was, in fact, Ambedkar talks of this in 1949 in the Constituent Assembly, where he says parliamentary practices that were there. There was voting rules and quorum and what have you. Ambedkar discusses that. But we were not taught this in schools when I was in school, nor is it being taught today. So I think this is a correction that must happen. Much of this has happened because of a certain variety of wokeism that prevailed in the past and that continues to prevail today, which wants us to forget our past and not have respect with that thing. So with these opening remarks, I would now request Suresh Prabhuji to make his presentation.
So firstly, I really want to congratulate India Foundation, the team led by Ram Madhav, the event curated by Rami in such a magnificent way. So I am really happy to be here, and thanks to the chair who is also a distinguished scholar as well as a great journalist, and I'm sure we'll hear most articulated views from Adharaniya Mukunda soon. So just firstly, we are discussing this very important issue of culture wars. Firstly, we thought the wars are part of history. Till recently when the wars erupted again. But we forget that history itself is a cause of war. Because we want to forget history, or you want to misinterpret history. And that's the cause of war. And that's the war that we call as cultural war. If you see the world in turmoil all over, the reason is we want to misinterpret so many real facts of life that have happened to us for several centuries, in some countries' case, for sure, for some more longer time for others. And now that's come to fore. So if you see the last century was actually decolonization century. You saw so many countries becoming free, the colonial powers had to retreat, but the colonization of land happened. Decolonization of land happened. But decolonization of mind never happened. Those who had occupied territory, they went away. But they still want to occupy the mind space. And that's a problem. Because a country like India, or if you go to many civilizations, each civilization had a unique characteristic. It had richness. It had versatility. And all of that, suddenly you want to forget and say, no, this never existed. And therefore, you are a person, a civilization, a society, as we see from our eyes, from the eyes of those who colonized, or those who are left over, the colonial tendencies into those territories which they left. So if you try to do that, obviously there has to be a conflict. Because reality is different, and what you want to tell us as an alternate reality is completely different issue. So why you see the war today suddenly? Because after decolonization, you saw a lot of calmness. People accepted that now we have become free, we'll operate our own governments. But that was actually a calm before storm. Because till that time, people are just trying to reconcile to the new reality. Oh, we are now the masters of our own destiny, we can rule our own country. But then realization came that we can now manage our governments, but we are asked to forget our heritage. So those who came and plundered our wealth, luckily, could never take away our spiritual strengths. That survived, which gives us the ability to understand the reality from our own perspective. And therefore, today, what you see as culture war suddenly erupting, not true. If you look at volcano, suddenly you see the lava coming out. Does it mean volcano never existed? Volcano always there. But an eruption happened now, the lava is coming out. So this suppression of reality, trying to eradicate the cultural ethos of our own country and many other countries in the world, Africa, Latin America, is the root cause of what you see and what you call as cultural wars. Wars are fought on battleground, for territories, for occupying something. But they can easily be, you can actually withdraw from the war. Trump has said he wants to end all the war. I wish him all the best. Let him actually end the wars. But those wars can be ended. But what about those wars which you are trying to rewrite history or you want to rephrase the reality? How can that ever be over unless those who are trying to push this agenda retreat on their own? And that's a war. So I'm very sure that the soul of any civilization is why the civilization exists. And in our culture, we believe that soul, mind, and body, if it is not aligned to one another, there is bound to be some sort of a disturbance. And that's why we practice yoga, to believe that we can bring all three together at the same time. So here, to end these culture wars, I think we should focus on the soul of that particular civilization.
Yeah.
Let's not try to touch and kill the soul. Soul cannot be killed. That's what our belief is. That soul always goes away. The body dies. But soul can never die. So our civilization has survived despite the fact that we have probably the only civilization somewhere wiped out, which I mentioned in the inaugural session, like Maya civilization, like Incas. And they were far, far developed. And they were called unadulterated civilization because they were not touched by outsiders. They just grew on their own. They had a counting system which the world didn't know, rest of the world at that particular time. Of course, we had discovered at that time a concept of zero. But point I'm saying is, today, we are facing this crisis because we are actually not focusing and trying to really keep the soul of that civilization alive. And I hope we succeed in doing that. Thanks to our great spiritual strength, we have still been able to alive on that. So I think wherever you want, any civilizational values, if they can be tried to be eradicated, at least in our case, it never happened. What I was saying was, we have so much of probably the only country which has been invaded several times, again and again by different invaders. But still we survived. And why we survived? Our religion survived, our civilization survived, our culture survived because of that spiritual strength. So I think we'll fight for that, not in the streets, but definitely we'll fight for our own survival, because if that goes away, we are lost. As you mentioned Mahatma Gandhiji. Gandhiji had said, if the salt loses saltiness, can you call it a salt? So if we lose our civilizational, it is in our DNA and we lose it, can we call ourselves that civilization? So I hope we succeed in doing that. As I said, we would like to hear the articulated view, so I will stop here. And thank you, and also my other colleagues for really bringing in this into the debate. Thank you very much.
Mukunda ji.
Yeah. So, about this subject, I would treat it in three ways. One is at the theoretical level, another at practical, when it comes to practically how to conquer. Third is the mindset which is required. Before that, I would start. Yesterday, when I was flying from Gorakhpur to Bangalore, in the flight, in the pouch, there was the menu card where there was an advertisement of a soft drink, which was, the tagline was, cool yet cultured. So I started thinking what it meant. That is what the advertiser wants to message. Is being cool can't be cultured, or it's whether it is difficult to be cool and cultured at the same time. So when we think about cultural wars or battles, mostly we think about the religious identities or civilizational things or political ideologies like that. But there are some other dimensions also. It is generation also, what we now call it as Generation Z. What they believe as culture, or I think culture stems from the values which in they believe, maybe temporary, or what we can say, the Generation Z or Generation Alpha, what they think as the values may differ with my generation also. So it may be generational, it may be ideological, political, religious, civilization. So when it comes to cultural battles, it's not only about the identities with religion and political, it may be generational also. This is one thing I wanted to bring to the audience. Second thing, when we think it in a theoretical way, when culture, as I said, it stems from value. And what I believe in, one of our philosopher from Mysore, he has explained it in a beautiful sentence. Professor M. Hiriyanna, while facts are comprehended, values are realized. So if I believe in some values which I think it's good for myself or for the world, which is superior values, which are noble values, that should conquer. Who have to conquer the war of culture? The good of the whole world should conquer it. The idea of goodness, that should conquer. To make it, this is at the theoretical level, it should conquer. But when it comes to practical thing, how many people are there? It comes to demography. How many people are there who believe in, as Shafalaji was saying in the last session, Udara Charitanana or Vasudeva Kutumbakam? That should conquer the war. Otherwise, there is no future for our mankind. So, if that idea, that value, that belief have to conquer, how many people who believe in these values or in these cultural things exist on this earth? If it comes to India also, it all boils down to numbers. So I would say, practically, those who believe in these values, in this culture, they should be in large numbers. I would take 2-3 minutes to explain it. Because if somebody thinks that my identity matters more and it doesn't align with the people who are in large numbers or in majority, I'm not talking about majority, minority in the religious sense, but those who believe in goodness of the whole world, that the idea, who believe in large number in that goodness, the person who identifies himself other than it and he wants to put it or make it his idea or his identity more important, that will create tension. For example, in a lighter manner, if everybody sitting here decides that we'll have lunch at 1 o'clock, it is more required. Yeah. So, if somebody thinks I will have it 2 o'clock, session is going on, and he will come and sit here taking lunch, it's okay. But if he comes sit here in my place and start eating, that will create tension. So, in our Shastras, in our scriptures, there is a very beautiful two words which I heard from a great scholar. It talks about Kendriya Dharma and Parsha Dharma. Both are dharmas only. Yes, there is a space, there is a time who thinks that I am different, my value is different. But if we start asserting it, that will create battles, that will create into wars. Because though value is a very subjective matter, when we live in communities or when we live in large societies, it also becomes transsubjective matter. That is, not only 20 people believe, maybe 100 people believing, it will be lakhs and crores of people started believing it. It is right or wrong, it's the second thing. But when the communities start asserting, what happened in England or in many places, that was the problem. Those who are believing, this is our belief because of religious reasons. We have to assert it on the others. There comes this, what I said, the Kendriya Dharma and Parsha Dharma. Yes, you have your belief, but you have to manage it. I was reading a book by some Asho monk who was written about it. He has called it as identity trap. Even he says that it's an identity synthesis, because some people will get into identity trap many times for political reasons, for religious reasons. People will be, there will be identity synthesis, the process of synthesizing the identity that will create tensions. That's what why these wars are happening, in my view, because of it. So how to manage it? At theoretical level, as I said, even our great Rishi Munis and scholars have also thought about it, and there are so many scriptures available. Though I am not well versed in any of the Shastras, I will not even say it's a borrowed knowledge, it's a borrowed information, what I am putting now. There is a book called Ishta Siddhi, by one written by, or it has been translated to English by one of the scholars, in which the author, it's a commentary on a work by a great scholar called Vimuktanand, in which the author discusses about the khyati. Khyati doesn't mean fame. How the things, whether living or non-living things, present to this world, where he categorizes it to three, this one: akhyati, anyatha khyati, atma khyati. I will not go into details, but this atma khyati, it's more about what we can say, it's about perception or the ideas, where myself, how I present to the world, it will differ, as Shafalaji or Apurva was discussing in the last session. You have space and time for everything, but how to manage it? If it is different from the majority, if it is different from the Kendra Dharma, how to manage the Parsha Dharma? So, you can have it, but you have to align with the others. If your group, or as I said, it's a trans-subjective, if 100 people think that we are different and we have our own beliefs from the other 1,000 people, and we will battle it, their war starts. So our Shastras, this one has discussed about, as I said, in that Ishta Siddhi also, in that work, how to manage our Atma Khyati. That is, how we present to this world, it has to be managed. It has to be aligned with the others also. So today, as I said, cultural war, not only about, there are so many things. Everything has becoming a war, whether it is environmental issues, climate change, or fertility issues, or race, or immigration. And if it comes to India, about cow, beef, or Ayodhya, Mathura, Kashi, everything. It's becoming a battle because people who believe in global good or noble values, they have been confronted by some section of our society who doesn't care for it. So practically when it comes, as I said, and the person sitting here, he is expert in, or he has gone into so much of research into demography of our country. I would say everything boils down to how many people exist on this earth or in India who believe in these noble thoughts or noble values, or these cultural values which are most required for the whole world. So I would end here. This is the what we can say, this is the requirement of these times. I would say those people who believe in global good, they have to assert. Then only they can conquer the war. Otherwise, you'll be confronted with values or beliefs which are not for the global values or global good. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yoram ji, it's your turn.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to Ram Madhav and to everyone at the India Foundation. It's a great honor to be here. It's a great honor for my country, for Israel, to have a small delegation included in your important deliberations. Look, I have to be frank. I think it's been a little bit difficult to spend 2 full days talking about branding Bharat, because branding as an exercise that we're all participating in here, it's a joyful, optimistic kind of an exercise. We hear many different people. Almost all the speakers talk about the brilliant future, and these are sentiments that I share. If anyone were to ask me, no one asked me, but if somebody had put me on one of these branding panels and said, what kind of branding do you think we should have for India, I would have said, brilliant Bharat. Brilliant Bharat. And I'm not saying that to flatter. I'm saying that from the heart, as an admirer. That what is it really that for 2 days you've been talking about? Brilliance in science, brilliance in spiritual contributions to the world, a brilliant future. I think it works well. I'm in favor of it. So there, I contributed something to the good feeling, and if anybody wants any more of my help in that, I'd be happy to contribute. But our job on this panel and on the next panel is not to make people feel good. Our job is to talk about the obstacles and the challenges, and that's also crucial in branding. I mean, Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola sits down to discuss its brand, they begin by talking about the rivals. They say, what's a market survey? We have Pepsi competing. We have all this competition, and that we haven't done so much. And in fact, I think that has made the discussion in many ways very difficult. I would say that the atmosphere of the last 2 days, in which, more or less the feeling is there are no enemies, there are no rivals, there are no really big dangers. The future is blue skies. The future is open. We can be friends with everyone. we've heard that from a number of speakers, that we can be aligned with everyone. We can be aligned with China and America and Israel and Iran. We can be aligned with everyone. But I feel like I've been here before. I feel like I've heard all of this before, and I don't mean to be insulting, because, like I say, I feel like I'm a friend. But I think that if we could enter a time machine and go back to, let's say, Tony Blair in the late 1990s and his branding, Cool Britannia, he's going to change Britain from an old oppressive empire that people resent, and change it into something open and young and future-oriented and cool. And all of these feelings are feelings that you can feel here 30 years later. But I would like to ask, because I think it's the responsible thing to do, what happened to cool Britannia, to all of those good feelings, to the worldview where Britain could be friends with everyone, that it had to be enemies to no one. So now it's 25 years later, almost 30 years later, and you could make a very strong case that, and many of my friends in Britain, they do make this case. You could make a very strong case that in the 25 years since Tony Blair rebranded Britain, that the United Kingdom has destroyed itself. Right? That's not me speaking. If you talk to nationalists or religious people or conservatives on the right in the UK, they would tell you Britain has destroyed itself. Now, how did this happen? How did you go from all of this good feeling and openness that we've been hearing the last couple of days to a country which is feels like it's on the verge of irreparable disaster? And the answer is, this takes us to the topic of wokeism or woke neo-Marxism. The answer is that while we here, or they in Britain, or in America and other countries, in Israel, in my country, we had a similar phenomenon, while the business people and the intellectuals are busy imagining an open world where everyone's going to cooperate with us, everyone's going to like us, no one's going to hate us, competition is going to be friendly competition. While that's going on, we tend to forget that there are people, many people, who spend their time trying to figure out how to destroy whatever it is that we're trying to brand as a positive thing. All right, and in fact, the way that this works, if you follow the development of the woke neo-Marxist ideology in the universities in America and Europe, if you follow it, you'll see that their goal is precisely whatever is successful about Britain, whatever is great about Britain or America or Israel or India, whatever is great and successful, that's precisely the thing that's going to be attacked. So the woke is the anti-branding. Now, this is an ideology. It's very well developed at this point. There are thousands and thousands of professors at universities in all of the democratic nations who spend their time, they're paid salaries often by the government, they're paid a full-time salary to do nothing other than to think, what can we do to hack the good feeling and the liberalism and the good branding and the strengthening of this country, and to prove to everyone that everything that was strong and good about this country is actually evil and deserves to be destroyed. Now, I don't mention Marxism only in order for name calling. That's not of interest to me. I mention Marxism because the original Marxist idea was explicitly revolutionary. Right? You're all familiar with this, that Marx believed that the working class, the proletariat, would overthrow and destroy the ruling classes and take charge in some kind of a utopian political maneuver. But the key was that the ruling classes had to be destroyed. That didn't work out so well for a simple reason, because it turned out that the working classes, once are more nationalist than they are Marxist. They love their country, and if their country goes to some trouble to help the working classes advance, then they're grateful and they love their country. So that didn't work. So neo-Marxism is a concoction where academic intellectuals said, okay, the working class is not going to be our friend. So who do we have who can work on destroying the country, achieving that overthrow, achieving the revaluation of everything that was good and destroying it? Family, nation, tradition, religion, country, man and woman, anything that was good and sacred and holy. Our goal is to achieve Marxist revolution, but we're not going to do it with the proletariat. We're going to do it in another way. Marcuse is explicit in his essays in the late 60s and early 70s. All right, and his argument is simple. The proletariat won't help us. What we need is an alliance between the university, the professors who can understand the need to destroy this oppressive country, its evil history, its evil religion, its evil social ways to destroy it. We need professors, and they need to be allied with street fighters, with people who will go to the streets and cause so much disruption that people will become afraid to disagree with the professors. Now, Marcuse thought that the alliance would be intellectuals from the West plus third world, blacks and other minorities. Since then, there's been most of that has happened, but there's been a little bit of a change. At this point, I would say that the woke neo-Marxists in the West have discovered that the most effective street fighters that they have are Muslim supremacists. The most effective ally that Western neo-Marxist professors have is Muslim neo-supremacy. Muslim supremacist organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, I want to be clear, this is not an anti-Muslim speech. I'm sure that the majority of Muslims in most countries are patriots. They want to live in peace with their neighbors. But it is a fact that as we watch the development of the woke in country after country, there is some proportion of the Muslim population. I can't take maybe it's 25%. I don't know what the numbers are. But there's some percentage that are not looking to become patriotic part of their own country. And they're willing to take part with the woke in overthrowing everything that's of value, everything that's of greatness and success about the country in which they live. Why? Because they believe that the future is Muslim. Not Christian, not Jewish, not Hindu, not liberal, but Muslim. All right, so this hack, it's a philosophical, but also a political hack of liberalism. If Marcuse were sitting in the room for the last 2 days, he would say, great, Bharat is ready for the revolution. Listen to them. They think it's all blue skies. They have no enemies. They talk about inclusion. They talk about freedom. They talk about rights. They talk about diversity being our strength. Right? And I don't have a problem with diversity being your strength as long as you understand that diversity is your strength up until the moment that your country disintegrates, like Britain is disintegrating right now, and then it's not your strength anymore. So the issue that I think that we need to face is not, I don't in any way mean to take away from the lovely dreams and aspirations of India. Anything I can do to contribute, I would want to. I feel like a friend. But I think that there's a naivete about this liberalism and diversity and inclusion, which it has basically destroyed Britain. A series of governments for 25 years have been unable to make changes in immigration, in trade, in anything else that the general public feels that they need in order to get out of the woke trajectory of destruction. America is, look, most of you know this, for the last 8 years, Americans have felt that they are on the verge of civil war. And this isn't a joke. they still feel they're on the verge of civil war. They believe that their country has never been as divided, that people have never hated each other as much as since the Civil War, since the 1860s. And India, if it's going to avoid this, has to learn from these experiences. You have to learn what is the weakness of all of this liberalism and thinking in economic terms and including everybody and having, you know, no allies because everyone is our friend, we're allied with everyone. There are people who have figured out how to hack that. There are people who have figured out how to make use of your good will and good spirit to destroy you. And they're going to try. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, some of the points you have made are really very disturbing for democracies across the world. You know, whatever is good has to be destroyed. In America, UK, India, wherever, all the democracies. And this must be really a very small coterie of intellectuals and so on in some universities and media and so on, isn't it? That is exactly what it is in terms of numbers.
Look, everyone, for decades, the answer, if someone would say, let me give obvious examples. If you're not familiar with these books, you probably are, but look them up. In 1987, Alan Bloom wrote a book called The Closing of the American Mind. In 1991, Dinesh D'Souza wrote a book called Illiberal Education. Both of these books, the first written by a Jew, the second by a Hindu. Actually, Dinesh is Christian, but he's Indian, so you should claim him. Both of these books laid out the entire trajectory of how the universities were going to be first taken over by, the word woke didn't exist back then, but the neo-Marxist revolution, how it would first take the universities and then use the education system to take over the schools, the media, the Hollywood,